The last beacon of the human race flickered weakly above a dying planet. The once proud city of Earthborn had turned into a graveyard of quiet towers and broken ships. Smoke no longer rose, because there was no one left to light a fire. Above, the world hung the last fleet of Earth, tired ships, dented hulls, and the scars of too many battles. Command ship Resolute Dawn drifted at the center. Inside, silence filled the bridge except for the soft hum of machines trying to stay alive. Captain Reen stood at the viewport, staring into the darkness between stars. His uniform was worn thin, and his face carried lines that spoke of decades in war. He had fought for so long that peace felt like a dream someone else once told him about. They had sent calls for help months ago. Messages were sent to every corner of the galaxy where allies might still exist. Once, humanity had friends. Trading. Partners, treaty signers, species who called them brothers in arms. But none had answered. The stars stayed silent. Now the enemy had arrived at the edge of the system. 1,000 warships, sleek and bright, carrying the symbol of the Dominion. An empire that devoured worlds in the name of control. Their leader had sent a simple message: surrender or be erased. Reen did not reply. He only watched the endless dark. Commander Lyra entered the bridge quietly. Her voice was calm, but her eyes carried the same exhaustion that every human had now. Captain, we've counted them. Over 1,000 ships. Their formation covers the entire outer orbit. Reen nodded slowly. And our allies? She looked away. None, sir. The silence that followed felt heavier than gravity. At that moment, the captain turned toward the holomap. Small blue icons represented humanity's remaining ships. Only 42 remained, barely operational. Most were patched together with spare parts scavenged from dead worlds. Yet every one of them carried veterans, soldiers, and survivors who had seen more loss than any living being should. Reen's voice was steady. If no allies come, then we hold this line alone. Lyra looked at him. Alone, sir? He smiled faintly. We've always been alone. We just forgot that for a while. The comm channel lit up across the fleet. Every captain, every pilot, every technician stopped what they were doing as the captain's voice filled their ships. This is Captain Reen of the Resolute Dawn. To all ships still under the banner of Earth, this is our last stand. No one is coming. The stars have turned their backs on us. But that's fine. We never needed mercy. We never needed rescue. We only needed each other. We are the children of Earth, the survivors of 1,000 battles, and we do not kneel. A long silence followed. Then one by one, ship captains answered. For Earth, for the fallen, for every world we lost. The last fleet turned to face the incoming storm. The Dominion Armada entered the system in perfect formation. Bright engines cut through the void. Their ships were new, flawless, and confident. They expected to sweep aside what little resistance remained. But the humans did not retreat. They charged. The Resolute Dawn led the line. With shields barely holding and weapons half working, the fleet fired as one. The blackness of space lit up with streaks of light and fire. Human ships moved in strange, unpredictable patterns, shaped by experience instead of precision. Every ship had a captain who had already faced death 100 times. They didn't fight for orders. They fought because there was nowhere left to run. Enemy ships broke under their assault. For every human ship that fell, 10 of the Dominions went silent. Their commanders could not understand how this dying race, outnumbered and outgunned, fought with such fury and unity. On the bridge, Lyra shouted, "We've lost the horizon. The iron wind is burning, but they're still firing." Reen watched as the screen flickered with red. "Tell them to aim for the command vessels. Make them remember what humans can do." Through the chaos, the humans pushed forward. Their ships bled sparks and metal fragments, yet none broke formation. Their attacks were not organized by software or command AI. They were guided by instinct, courage, and stubbornness. Hours passed. The Dominion commander, watching from a distant flagship, began to realize something that unsettled him deeply. The humans weren't trying to survive. They were trying to win. Every ship that exploded did so while ramming an enemy cruiser or overloading its core to take others with it. The human fleet didn't just resist, they punished. By the 7th hour, half the Dominion fleet was in ruins. The rest fell into disarray, confused and fearful. The idea of fear was new to them. They had crushed hundreds of worlds without resistance. But now they faced something that didn't fit into their perfect calculations. Lyra turned from her console. "Captain, we've lost contact with half our ships." Reen nodded. "They did what they had to. So will we." A burst of static came through the comms. It was the voice of a pilot from the Stormlight. "Captain, this is the end of the line for us. Reactor's gone, but we've still got one shot left. Give us a target." Reen's eyes moved to the map. Their command carrier. Send them home with fear. Moments later, a blinding flash lit the entire system. The Dominion carrier vanished in silence. When the light faded, only 9 human ships remained. The Dominion fleet was broken, shattered remnants scattered through orbit. But victory came at a cost. The Resolute Dawn itself had lost most of its systems. Fires spread across decks, and gravity flickered on and off. Reen stood silently on the bridge. His voice was weak but clear. "Status?" Lyra smiled faintly. "Alive, sir?" "Barely, but alive." He leaned against the railing, looking out at the wreckage of both fleets. "Then we did what we came to do." Outside the viewport, space was littered with the remains of war. Yet among the drifting metal, something incredible happened. One by one, Dominion ships that still had power began to retreat. Not in order, not by command, but out of fear. The invincible empire had been broken by those it thought extinct. The surviving humans didn't cheer. They had no strength left for that. But deep inside, they felt something stronger than pride. They had proven that even when forgotten, even when abandoned, humanity was still a force that refused to die quietly. Days later, the last remaining ships gathered in orbit around the ruined planet. They had no resources, no reinforcements, and little hope. Yet their spirits remained unbroken. Reen stood once more before his crew. "We held the line, and though no allies came, we found something else, ourselves. We are not the lost children of a dying world. We are its proof that willpower can burn brighter than any sun." Lyra smiled tiredly. "What now, Captain?" He looked toward the stars. "Now, we rebuild. Somewhere out there, others will hear what happened here. Maybe not friends, maybe not soon. But they'll hear that the humans fought until the void itself blinked." The fleet began to move again. Engines flickered to life, carrying them toward the unknown. They had no home left, but every direction was a promise. Weeks turned into months as they traveled from system to system, salvaging parts, repairing hulls, keeping old ships alive with stubborn determination. Every scar became a reminder of who they were. Word spread through the galaxy. Traders whispered tales of a human fleet that refused to die. Even the Dominion soldiers began to speak of the ruthless survivors, the ones who destroyed 1,000 ships and walked away. No one knew where they came from or where they went, but everyone knew one thing: you did not face humans lightly. Years passed and the fleet became a legend. Sometimes they appeared when oppressed colonies called for help. Sometimes they struck against those who conquered too freely. No one could predict when or where they would arrive, but when they did, the tide always turned. Among them were engineers who built new weapons from old scrap, scientists who turned broken satellites into living habitats, and children who grew up hearing stories not of despair, but of courage. The Resolute Dawn still led them. It was no longer a ship. It was a moving monument to endurance. Its hull carried the markings of every world it had fought for. One day Lyra stood beside the captain again, older now, her hair streaked with silver. "You ever think about that day?" she asked softly. Reen smiled faintly. "Every day." "The day no one came," she nodded. "Funny. I used to hate that day. But now I think it made us who we are." He looked out the viewport at the stars. "Yes, No allies came, only us. And that was enough. In the silence that followed, the resolute dawn continued its endless journey across the stars, carrying the legacy of humanity's defiance. The galaxy might forget names, planets, and empires, but it would never forget the day when the humans stood alone and won. Because in that moment, when the darkness thought it had swallowed everything, it discovered something it could never destroy. It discovered the heart of survivors, and those survivors never stopped fighting, never stopped moving, never stopped believing that even the smallest spark could light a universe that had gone cold. The story of the human fleet spread far beyond their sight. Across unknown worlds, young beings of many species whispered it to each other before sleep. They were alone, but they fought like a storm. They lost everything, but they didn't stop. They are still out there somewhere, and perhaps they were right. Somewhere in the endless dark, the engines of the resolute dawn still hum quietly, carrying the last words of their captain through the void. We are the survivors of 1,000 battles. We are humanity, and we are never truly alone.